5.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is your boy 5-Piece, producer and engineer extraordinaire, and today we're going to talk about something interesting, something that doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's going to be dynamic EQ. I'm using a song that I used in my past 2 lessons. This is Don't Feel the Same. It's my record featuring Gudini, Rich Kid, and Romeyo Wilson. And so far in this session, I've already done some EQ to the vocal as well as some compression, specifically to Gudini's main vocal on the first verse. Now, there's some low-end stuff that I want to clean up, and I'm going to talk about this in the context of using dynamic EQ because it is a little different from your typical EQ, and I want to just differentiate that and explain why I would be using it. So if we jump into Pro Tools for a second, just take a look. Let's listen to this record, and I'll just get you ready to understand what we're going to talk about. So here it is. I'll play just the first part of the verse for some context.
What you mean my little homie got hit tonight? Why I feel like it's hell on earth and we live in the Dodge. The streets got us in a trap and we hypnotized. I was trying to ride in the foreigns, he ain't get to ride. Right before he passed on, I told him to rap on. Man, I love how you are rich, be killing the rap songs. 2 chicks with him, I told him you damn wrong. Then we paused for a second, proceeded to laugh on.
So it sounded pretty cool. I think Goo's voice could come up a little bit, so I've already bumped up the volume just a smidge as I was playing it there. But if we solo this for a sec, let's really go in and listen again.
Me and my little homie got hit tonight. Why I feel like it's hell on earth and we live in the Dodge.
There's some low-end resonances that are not always there, but sometimes they do come up, because I know also Goo recorded this in a booth that was a little small. It wasn't really properly treated, so sometimes you can hear the room in that. Now, sometimes you want to go in and use EQ to sort of notch out these frequencies, but the problem with EQ is what's happening is you're applying it to the entire track and it's happening consistently throughout. So that means you're reducing that frequency even at times where you actually may not want to reduce it. So the benefit of dynamic EQ is it allows you to just reduce a frequency only when it becomes too overwhelming in your mix. Similar to a compressor only compresses when a signal passes a threshold and causes it to work. A dynamic EQ is the same. There's a threshold that you'll set, and then whenever that frequency becomes too much, builds up too much, and exceeds that threshold, then that EQ will notch that frequency down. So it's very selective, and it'll ultimately allow you to achieve a more transparent sound with your mix and with your vocal when you're mixing. It's also applicable to other sounds, but we're going to obviously take a look at it in the context of this vocal. So I'm actually going to put you guys onto a free plugin that I use for this. It's from Tokyo Dawn Labs. It's called TDR Nova. This is it right here. I find myself using this quite a bit lately. I'll probably include a link in the bio as well so you guys can take it in and get a free copy yourself. Hopefully it's still free. It was when I checked it out. But anyway, we're gonna take a look here. Now it has 4 bands, as you can see. I'm not going to use all 4. I'm only going to need 1. But I'm going to set up maybe band 2. It has a few parameters, right? It looks like a typical EQ. I can kind of notch things out, and I can either do it here on the buttons or I can just do it manually like so. I'm going to just reset this for a second. But as you might notice, there's a threshold button here. Now when I press this threshold button, it's basically turning it into a dynamic EQ, and I can dial in a threshold, again, that level that'll basically say, hey, this is too much level, start working to turn it down. We're going to dial this in a sec, but first what I want to do is identify some problem frequencies in this mix, or in this vocal at least, and then set the threshold after, so then we know that's the point when it should start, you know, turning the track down, or turning that frequency range within the track down. So I like to use this band solo function. It'll just solo the band of Goo's voice.
My little homie got hit tonight. Why I feel like it's hell on earth and we live in the Dodge. In the trap and we hit.
And usually when I'm doing this, I'm really focusing a lot on the lower end stuff because that's where there's a lot of mud. Also a place where there's a lot of warmth, so we want to be careful. That's why I don't want to just use an EQ and notch it out. But I want to use this dynamic EQ because I could just get rid of those problem spots when it becomes a little too overwhelming and muddy. So definitely somewhere around here I could just identify it quickly around 191 Hertz. If I were to take the solo off and just increase the gain, I'll get rid of the threshold for a second. We can really just pronounce this frequency.
My little homie got hit tonight. Why I feel like it's hell on earth and we live in the Dodge. The streets got us in a trap and we hypnotized. I'm trying to ride in the foreigns, he ain't get to ride.
Roughly that frequency, right? I'm going to reset the gain. So what I'm going to do is I'm not even going to touch the gain at all. I'm going to put the threshold on, okay? And I also want to make the Q relatively narrow because I really just want to focus on this one specific problem spot. You can also change the curve, so we're on a bell right now, but you can also make it a shelf, lower, high shelf, right? But I want to make it fairly focused on this specific frequency. All right, which is cool. And you can see as I play this, you'll notice the threshold is starting to move. It's showing you the level of the actual track itself, right? So pay attention here for a sec. You can see where it's kind of hitting, right? Now what I want to do is I'm going to take the solo function off. We're going to do this in context. I'm going to just play this and I'm going to dial back the threshold. And as I dial this back, you're going to see this little blue curve come in, sleep down a little bit, and you'll also see this start to work and reduce whenever there's a little, too much volume for that frequency range. So here we go, let's do this.
My little homie got hit tonight. Why I feel like it's hell on earth and we living to die. The streets got us in a trap and we hypnotized. I was trying to ride in the foreigns, he ain't get to ride. Right before he passed on, I told him to rap on. Man, love how you and Rich be killing the rap songs. 2 chicks with him. I told him you damn wrong. Then we paused for a second, proceeded to laugh on. Took one to the chest, man, nothing could last long. Left 2 kids behind, I know it's a sad song. All of the past gone, life could be so cheap. I can feel it in my soul, the pain can run so deep. Grew up in the same street, sold from the same store, played in the same pool, naked the same door. Know it's all about staying tough, but I wrote this little verse just to say what's up. Man, I had a little baby, man, who would've thought? Man, I make sure she never gotta live like us. And them snake ass niggas we'll never trust. And homie, we could go to war if you say you tough. I seen people hit the floor for not saying me my.
So you get the idea. You can see it working and turning down that frequency, right? You can also hear it's not as muddy or not as low end heavy as it was when I have this bypassed. In this case, I like how this sounds, and I think it works for this track. Now, as you notice, it has a lot of the same parameters as a compressor. You see a ratio, you see an attack and a release. I'm not really playing with this too much, but you can definitely set it up, to react a little bit differently. For example, you can have a slower attack than we have, or a faster one. It all depends. I kind of like it at that 10 millisecond. It seemed okay to me. Release. It's going to let go, how fast it's going to let go, so you may want to dial that in, make it a little faster. You may want to make the ratio a bit more extreme, so you're getting a little bit more reduction. But I find that right now this is pretty cool, and I'm not too worried about it. The other cool thing is here too, you can reintroduce your dry mix, so you can get the original track that doesn't have this effect taking place. Let's explore one more way I would use this. I would use it the exact same way, but in this vocal, you'll notice that there's some harsh resonances when it comes to Gudini's S's, which is a common problem. A lot of vocalists have problems with the S's. That's why things like a de-esser exist. Now, we can sort of set this up in a way that will work like a de-esser, but kind of using the same principles here with an EQ. So what I'm going to do is I'll put on this 4th band, and I'm going to try to identify where these harsh S resonances are. Chances are they're going to be higher up, probably in that 3,000 to 7,000 range, depending on the vocalist. So let's try to identify that. I'm going to solo the band. I'm going to narrow the cue so it's very specific to which frequencies we're affecting and not too wide. And then we're just going to try to find that part, that problematic part.
My little homie got hit tonight. Why I feel like it's hell on earth and we living to die. Shit, got us in a trap and we hypnotized. I'm trying to ride in the foreigns, he ain't get to ride. Before he passed on, he told him to rap on. Yeah, love how you and Rich be killing the rap songs. Yeah, chicks with him. I told you damn wrong. Pause for a second, proceeded to laugh on. Yeah, went to the chest, but nothing could last long. I know it's a sad song. All the past gone. I can be so cheap. I can feel it in my soul. The pain is so deep.
So somewhere around 6,000, this is where Gu's S's are problematic, at least to my ears right now. So similar to what I just did, I'm going to unsolo the band, I'm going to turn the threshold on, and I'm going to just dial the threshold in until I start to see a slight reduction, right? And make sure that I'm kind of achieving that sound that I want, which is going to be, a less harsh S sound, all right? So here we go, I'm going to play and dial the threshold.
My little homie got hit tonight. Why I feel like it's hell on earth and we living to die. The streets got us in a trap and we hypnotized. I was trying to ride in the foreigns, he ain't get to ride. Right before he passed on, I told him to rap on. Man, love how you and Rich be killing the rap songs. 2 chicks with him. I told him you damn wrong. Then we paused for a second, proceeded to laugh on. Took one to the chest, man, nothing could last long. Left 2 kids behind, I know it's a sad song. All of the past gone, life could be so cheap. I can feel it in my soul, the pain can run so deep. Grew up in the same street, sold from the same store, played in the same pool, naked the same door. Know it's all about staying tough.
This is pretty cool. You can really tell that whenever those S's are being hit, it's really working to reduce them. And then it might be reducing the odd thing here and there, maybe like some CH sounds, some T sounds, etc., because they sort of share the frequency range. But for the most part, it's really tackling those harsh S's that I hear for me, kind of similar to the way that a de-esser would. So this is a really cool trick / tool to use, dynamic EQ. Functions similar to a compressor, but focused on frequencies and very specific to those frequencies and reducing them. I'm not using the gain, I'm not adding or taking away that method. I'm just using the threshold and basically dialing it in a way where it'll automatically detect and turn down those problem frequencies when they occur. So I hope you guys check out this free tool, because again, it's free, so you got nothing to lose by doing so. And I hope you can implement this into your mixes like I do. I literally use this in pretty much all of my mixes in a very similar way to what you're seeing here. So don't sleep on this free game. If you got value out of this, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends, your producer friends, artist friends, vocalists that are recording and mixing themselves, anybody you think that would gain value from this tutorial. And I hope to see you guys again soon. This is your boy 5P signing off. Peace out.
5.